Hello, Aquarius. My name is Vincent, and this is a message for all of you who have Aquarius placements out there, whatever they may be. Couple things, some housekeeping. For those of you that are curious, I will put it down in the description. I almost said prescription. But I'm using the Tarot Yohualli Ehécatl deck by MiCorazonMexica. You can kind of see that. Beautiful deck. You've probably already seen it in some of the other videos that I've been putting out, but highly recommend. So for those of you that are interested in getting your hands on your own, just search for what I've got in the description. I also want to apologize right off the bat if you notice my teeth look green or if my lips turn green at some point in the video. I am drinking spirulina, so don't be alarmed or shocked or hopefully too grossed out. It's just algae. Don't be grossed out. I've already pulled a couple of cards for you, so I guess we'll just kind of dive right in. First card that I drew for you today was Tlacapiloli, which is the Hanged Man. This is the card of Pisces, but more fundamentally what it represents, among other things, is a state of suspension of belief, of expectation, considering things from a totally different and radical perspective than whatever has been conventional up till this point. It also can represent a state of limitations, whether self-imposed or externally imposed upon you, which I think is an interesting theme to explore, because in order for me to kind of understand which direction to take this card, I pulled another one, and it was the Nine of Wands. And this is the middle decan of Sagittarius. It's a moon-ruled decan. And I don't know about y'all, but a lot of times when I see the Nine of Wands, I think about imprisonment, I think about being behind bars. So I think the theme of restriction and limitation is something to explore with your reading today. And I'm not saying that y'all are in jail or going to jail or any sort of situation like that. It can manifest that way, but I think more fundamentally what it's talking about is restraining or restricting yourself from moving in a specific direction, making specific decisions, interacting with certain people. I feel like if you haven't already done this for yourself, external influences may be already presenting you with this theme and already kind of holding you back, whether or not you want it to. And as I was saying, holding you back, I was looking at the interesting little ties that are on this figure's legs. Sorry for all of the delicate souls out there for putting that in your face, but for a split second it was looking like traffic cones, and traffic cones typically act as barriers showing you where you should not veer off or where you should not go when you're driving. It establishes an ordained path. It restricts you to a specific direction. It's strange, but I'm seeing like I don't even know what the correct vocabulary is for this, but when you have like cattle or sheep and you're trying to herd them into a specific location, whether that's a pen or into a truck or something, you have fences in place to establish the path for them that you want them to go. And I feel like this is kind of the energy that you're dealing with right now, or that you will be dealing with, is where you're sort of being shepherded into a specific defined area. And I'm obviously going to pull some more cards just to kind of get a sense of what that is and why it is that it's happening. Another connection that I usually have with this card is it sort of, to me, feels, even in the Rider-Waite depiction of this card, it's like this is a warrior who has fought and maybe won a battle, but it's sort of like the message is at what cost? Like, I have used my will to push to this point, but what have I lost and sacrificed in the process? What paths and decisions did I forego in order to reach this particular endpoint that I am now standing at? You know, and I feel like what some of the staves in the background can represent is the other warriors, so to speak, the friends, the allies that were killed in this proverbial battle. You know, the other choices that you could have made, that you could have used to go into different directions, or that you could have chosen that would have completely changed the landscape of the present. And I wonder if maybe this card coming forward with the Nine of Wands, it's sort of like you're entering into a state of reflection, or a state of contemplation of what you could have done differently. Or, more productively, what you can learn from the choices that you did make, and how you can better improve upon them in the future, how you can improve your approach in the future. You know, that might be an important theme for you, Aquarius, because I feel like you guys are always sort of future-oriented. Another interpretation that I had of these two cards when I initially pulled them from the deck off camera was of what I have kind of seen as an almost universal Aquarius perspective of being ostracized from the normies in society as a result of your eccentric behaviors or beliefs or thought patterns, or even the quote-unquote radical ideas that you might have about how to improve reality, how to improve society, and feeling very much like it's, you know, you against the world. And then this card sort of representing the process of either you sort of suspending the more eccentric aspects of yourself in order to fit in with what is conventional, you know, adopting behaviors and ideas that aren't necessarily your own in order to appear to be more normal, or to live a more normal life. And maybe that's kind of being put on hold so that you can rediscover what's authentic to you. Or this is something that the people around you are experiencing, where they're finally catching up to your perspective on things. Because initially, if your ideas are too radical and too ahead of their time, so to speak, the people around you can be ill-prepared to understand what you're even talking about, or what you're even perceiving. And so they kind of just push you out to the fringes because you don't fit within their accepted paradigm of reality. And I don't think, you know, everybody's a little different, so I'm not going to kind of generalize this or say that this is true for everyone, but when you my goodness, I don't even go on. Okay, that particular train left the station and I couldn't get it back, but what I was trying to get at is this process. If you have an idea that is so many steps removed, in the sense of like the person you're talking to doesn't have any context for what you're talking about. They don't even understand the introductory topics that would lead them down the particular paths that you're just talking about. It'll be like you're speaking a totally different language to them, and everything will go over their head. And, you know, as a result, they can think that you're weird, or think that you're you know, maybe even at worst, mentally ill. Like, people are often afraid of the things that they don't understand. And so I feel like if you're the source of a lot of information that people don't understand, you can be looked at as somewhat of a threat is kind of a strong word, and I don't think that's necessarily the notion I'm trying to get across, but I'm hoping you're kind of following what I'm saying there. And so maybe this sort of suspension that's taking place is people are finally sitting down and taking the time to listen to what you've been saying, because now, with the context of where reality is in the present, they're actually ready to hear what you have to say and finally have the context to begin to understand what you've been talking about. I'm going to pull a couple more cards for you, kind of expand on this story here. Ooh, hi, these two, okay. Ooh, I don't think I've ever pulled this card from this deck in any reading that I've done thus far. But we have the Four of Flint. This is the Four of Swords. This is the last decan of the sign of Libra. And then we have Semanawak, which is El Mundo, the world. I'm looking at this card because typically in the depiction of the world card, you have the four fixed signs of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius showing up at the four different corners. And so I was trying to see if the artist had incorporated similar imagery into the four corners. I can't really tell. I can't really discern. I'm not super familiar with a lot of the imagery in this deck and the mythology behind it. I'm still learning. But let's see. Where are we taking this? So again, with this card, just based on the imagery, it's kind of connecting to the earlier discussion we were having about imprisonment or restriction, of limitation, of suspension. Usually the Four of Swords is the card of like retreat into rest and meditation. But you know, with everything else in mind, this theme of imprisonment, of being stuck somewhere and being forced to reckon with your present reality, is kind of coming through pretty strong too. It's also giving me like lockdown vibes. I was, during the whole mess that took place a few years back, I know we all remember, I was lucky enough to have a job that required me to go in, and that was, you know, it got me out of the house. I wasn't stuck at home. There were a lot of businesses that were closed, and the one I worked at was not, so I was still able to kind of go out into the world and interact. So I didn't get as much of the isolation aspect that a lot of people experienced, because I was still out and interacting with people and interacting with the world, in a sense. But this, to me, it feels like retreating into your bedroom, so to speak, and shutting everything else out, shutting everyone else out, and only focusing on the experience that you're having within yourself. And, you know, there's a lot of like downturned heads here where, you know, the energy kind of feels melancholic, maybe a little sad, maybe a little, not necessarily negative, but more focusing on the things that didn't go well or haven't transpired. yet. And maybe kind of being stuck in a rut. But I think there's also a medicine in this, because it's also necessary to retreat from the world every once in a while and rest and to dream and to reconnect with your subconscious and your unconscious and to recharge, connect to source, and reevaluate what's important to you in life. And I'm feeling compelled to say, like, if you're reaching like a state in your life where you no longer feel ambition, you no longer have goals set for yourself, maybe this is the perfect time for you to take a proverbial or literal vacation and reset, push the reset button on your life and on the situations that you're contending with on a daily basis. If you've lost inspiration and if you've lost your sense of verve within life, for life, things seem duller and not as colorful. This can be the universe trying to point out to you that you've diverged down a path that you didn't even want to go down in the first place. And so the situation gets turned on its head so that you're forced to look at things from an entirely fresh perspective. Because I don't know if you've been on autopilot up till this point, you just maybe had the blinders on, or you're wearing rose-colored glasses, so to speak. I don't know how it's working out for you in your situation, but without this suspension, without the brakes being pumped, you would have just continued on going through the motions, day in and day out, without taking time to reflect on why you're doing this, how you got here, and why, if you're unhappy, you continue to pursue this direction. There's an entire world out there for you to consider, and you've maybe been narrowing it down. Having tunnel vision is another kind of theme that I'm seeing with this card. This is either a very broad and open perspective on things or a very narrow and small perspective of things. And so maybe this process of considering different points of view is what's going to help broaden a narrow perspective. Because I can also kind of see this card as a sort of overwhelm of different paradigms, different individuals, different ideas or ideologies, even spiritual paths, just being so overwhelmed with the noise of it all that you can't even determine where it is that you stand in the midst of it. But knowing that somehow you're unique, you have a unique perspective that maybe you've forgotten or that you've suppressed. But the wheel continues to turn. A new day presents itself to you every morning, and with that, a new set of opportunities. And the possibility to grow beyond this state of inner restriction and limitation and repression, and allowing the ideas that you have to go out into the world rather than keeping them contained within yourself. There is value in the ideas that you have and in the thoughts that you explore. I'm going to pull one more card for you, Aquarius. Somehow I knew this card was going to come out for you. I think she tried to come out initially when I was clearing the deck. But we have the Two of Flints, the Two of Swords. I adore this card in this deck. It's so pretty. But this is more Libra showing up in your reading for whatever reason. Maybe look at where Libra is in your chart, but this is the first decan of Libra. So more air. Air and fire seem to be the primary elements in your reading. So look at the fire signs in your chart and look at the air signs in your chart, because they're part of the conversation right now. Maybe because of, or sort of being emphasized by Uranus moving into Gemini, because Uranus will be activating Gemini through conjunction within that sign, by being in that sign, but also trining Libra and Aquarius and sextiling the fire signs. So there's like supportive energy for both of the modalities there. So the first decan of Libra, it's a moon-ruled decan, and then you have the last decan of Libra being Jupiter-ruled decan. Kind of like I was saying before, where this is like the amalgamation of the ideas that are maybe being held within yourself. Possibly because you're still deliberating upon them, you're still reflecting on them, still trying to refine and work out what import your ideas have in the world outside of you, and how you can apply them to creating something practical and real. Because Jupiter to me is kind of like the inner library, where Mercury is like the actual words on each page of books and is the language that is used to convey the information, the rhetoric, the vocabulary, the perhaps poetic impulses behind it. Jupiter is like the collection of all the information and concepts in a more abstract and open way. And so when we're exploring this concept within the sign of Libra of intellectual consideration, of weighing out input, whether it's information or data, or even something as like sensory input, sensory experience, and trying to kind of deduce like, oh, this object appears this particular way, therefore it must be this color. Like that's kind of a basic description, but like that sort of process of deduction takes place very acutely within the sign of Libra. So we open into the Libran concepts with this moon-ruled decan, this I don't want to say crisis of choice, but maybe that's what is coming through. This acknowledgement that there is no one true way, there is no one truth. There are a multitude. And this is like the initial fork in the road, the initial point or experience that forces us to contend with that reality. Or maybe it's just the proverbial fork in the timeline where we're presented with a choice. Perhaps the choice to be authentic with ourselves and with the people around us, or to repress aspects of ourselves and silence ourselves and try to appear to be more normal and digestible for others, and but why? It can be also perhaps a consideration of it's easy to say that you've been born in the wrong time because of the ideas that you have, like you're too far ahead of your time, you were born too early, or maybe you feel like you were born too late. But the fact of the matter is that you're still here in this world for a particular reason. So instead of ruminating on that useless idea of feeling like you were born too soon or too late, whatever the case may be, you can change the space that you inhabit. I can see this as like you can travel to somewhere else on the globe where your ideas are actually met with positive acceptance and consideration. That's the beauty of living on the globe, is there's such a diverse array of perspectives, of human experiences and cultures and beliefs and ideas about how things should be done, that no matter how you think or how you present or how you behave, there is somewhere in the world, there's somewhere, perhaps even more locally, somewhere in your country, in your state, in your city, your town, where you will be met with acceptance, where the people are ready to hear what you have to say, and who are ready to present you with a response that isn't going to disappoint you, and that is actually going to add to what you share. And that's what makes the world go round. It's this discourse, this exchange of ideas that grows and grows and becomes something even more than what it initially started as by virtue of the interaction between individuals. Don't suppress yourself. Don't silence yourself. Go out and find your tribe. I don't know if that's like a main theme here, but it seems like it's kind of coming through this way. Another theme with this card, if you're in a situation where you feel like you're being presented with a specific choice or specific set of opportunities and you're not sure which one to go with, you're not sure which direction to take or which choice to make, this is like she obviously has a blindfold on. It's like this process of, instead of relying on outside information, on external cues about what's correct, instead of relying on maybe relying on rational process, but instead of relying on these external cues, you're sort of retreating into yourself and trying to consider your own truth and your own underlying perspective on what you're being presented with, so that you can make the choice that's right for you specifically without the outside noise and influences. You already know the choice that you're going to make or that you want to make. And it's just a matter of quieting everything else down so that you can hear your own voice again and make the decision that's in alignment with that. I don't know who needed to hear that. Maybe none of you. There's a couple other interpretations that I can pull out with these cards, but we're kind of pressed for time and I don't want to be talking at you for too long, so I'm going to hope that everything that I've said has been cohesive enough and touched on enough of the situation that you're dealing with. But feel free to share in the comments what's going on with you and if this resonated, and I don't know. I just like reading y'all's stories. So I'm going to wish y'all the best, Aquarius. Thanks for putting up with me and my green mouth and my green teeth. And yeah, take care of yourselves.